The question of the day simply starts with why? I realize that I'm a little late, as a few weeks ago one of my friends told me about this decision, and at first I thought it was someone over exaggerating. But a couple of you guys sent me the link, which pretty much confirms one of my initial fears about the US Marine Corps. But I just have to ask, why on earth would the US Department of Defense simply decide to remove all, and I actually mean literally all its tanks by the next 10 years? But one thing that I haven't been able to find information on yet is if they're just going to get rid of tanks, or are they going to get rid of armored fighting vehicles and armored personnel carriers? If that is the case, then it's going to be even worse. It is true that tanks aren't as big of a threat on the battlefield as they used to be, and warfare has changed to include cyber warfare, airstrikes, missile strikes, and covert missions behind enemy lines. It is definitely true also that the front lines are not the most important battlefield anymore. But in those instances when frontline combat is needed, tanks are very much still required. You know why? That's because heavy armor is the largest source of firepower on land and built for frontline combat at the same time. Infantry units need that support whenever they try to achieve a strategic objective. But some may ask, why not just use attack helicopters? They have even more firepower. There's just one problem with that. Aircraft can only stay on the battlefield for a limited amount of time before they have to return to refuel and rearm. This is called loiter time, and it takes up a lot of time, whereas tanks can remain on the battlefield until the mission is complete. I honestly don't get why the Department of Defense doesn't see that. Well, in any case, let's see one article which explains why tanks are being disbanded. Let's see the reasoning behind that. Okay, so it's apparently on this website called Stars and Stripes. So, Marines to reduce force by 12,000, decrease artillery units, and get rid of tanks in 10 years. My. Okay, so that's just the picture. Okay, so yeah, okay, Washington. The Marine Corps has decided it must eliminate its tank battalions and reduce its infantry and artillery units in 10 years as it converts its force to one more aligned with taking on potential adversaries such as China, the service announced Monday. You really think getting rid of tanks is going to make you more reliable in fighting China? General David Berger, the Marine Commandant, said in October that the Marine Corps is not optimized for great competition. It is not optimized to support a naval campaign. What? The reality of the world has forced them to throw out old assumptions and start fresh, he said at the time. Since summer, the Marine Corps has undergone a review of its personnel, units, and equipment to determine what type of forces the service will need to fight future battles. The Pentagon's 2018 National Defense Strategy puts China and Russia as the major world powers that the United States must be prepared to challenge as America's military advantages decline. The economic policies of China and its militarization in the South China Sea, and Russia's efforts to undermine NATO and its nuclear arsenal, are major concerns for the U.S. military, according to the National Defense Strategy. The Marine Corps is redesigning the 2030 force for naval expeditionary warfare in actively contested spaces, fully aligning the service with the direction of the National Defense Strategy. The Service Combat Development Command said in a statement, adding it will continue to evaluate and adjust the force design. The Marine unit that will see reductions in 10 years are infantry battalions will go down to 21 from 24. Artillery battalions will go to 5 down from 21. What? 5 from 21? Okay, come on. Like, seriously, that is really bad. Artillery is the main firepower of all land forces. Okay, the Marines will have ships, but you need some sort of not rocket, but gun artillery. That's more accurate than just missile artillery. Amphibious vehicle companies will go down to 4 from 6. Again, not good. How are the Marines going to land then? F-35B and F-35C Lightning II fighter squadrons will have less aircraft per unit, from 16 aircraft down to 10. Okay, well, I don't like the F-35 anyway, so okay. Tilt rotor, attack, and heavy lift squadrons will also have reductions and deactivations. The Marine Corps will eliminate its law enforcement battalions, units that build bridges, and reduce the service personnel by 12,000 in 10 years, a less than 7% reduction in the service's total force, according to the statement. So are they basically just trying to, incorporate the Marines into the Navy, sort of make it like naval infantry rather than its own branch? The reduction in units, equipment, and personnel is geared towards the Marine Corps' refocused efforts to work more closely with the Navy, especially in the Pacific region, to compete against China. Do you not realize that in the South China Sea there are plenty of islands, and you will need actual ground units securing those islands, and the Marines are actually going to be at the front lines of that. They're going to be the first ones to go in. You cannot just simply get rid of them. The 3rd Marine Expeditionary Force out of Camp Courtney in Okinawa, Japan, is the main focus of Marine efforts in the region, according to the statement. The 3rd Marine Expeditionary Force will be modernized to have 3 Marine littoral regiments that are trained and equipped to operate within contested maritime areas, according to the statement. The region will also have 3 Marine Expeditionary units that are globally deployable. The other 2 Marine Expeditionary Forces will provide forces to the 3rd Marine Expeditionary Force, according to the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps is also planning to increase its long-range rocket artillery abilities by 300, reduce its size of infantry battalions to allow for a more distributed force, and invest in unmanned air and ground systems, according to the statement. Well, I mean, you can't just I understand that quality is more important than quantity, but you can't just decrease them. I mean, China has the largest military in the world. You also have to be ready to prepare for that. But hold on, nothing here says about why tanks will go down. Okay, hold on, let me just find something else. There has to be something else that explains what's going on here. So I technically found another article which basically continues on this topic and adds a little more in depth. So this is how it goes. The U.S. Marine Corps is remaking itself to better fight China in a potential conflict. Okay, yes, we already know that. We already read all that. But look, hold on. Where's the part where it says why? Okay, so that's about artillery. Hold on. In return to the service will bulk up with long-range artillery and anti-ship missiles, weapons the service thinks will be more useful in island hopping campaigns in the South Pacific. Look, that was done during World War II, but in order to hold the actual land, basically Marines still use tanks, and that's still needed. Okay, let's go down to the Marine Corps, according to USNI News, says it is not optimized. Okay, we know that. Okay. So the sea is the location of several island archipelagos, including the Spratly Islands, Parcel Islands, and a number of islets, atolls, shoals, and other above-water terrain features. In recent years, China has claimed up to 90% of the South China Sea and established military bases at several key locations. So if war unfortunately breaks out, the Marine Corps will almost certainly ride into the South China Sea on Navy transport ships and seize many of these islands with military bases in order to deprive China of their ports and airfields and the ability to flex its military power. None of these islands are very large. Fiery Cross Reef, the size of a Chinese military airbase, is only 677 acres. Subi Reef is only 976 acres. The small size of these islands limits the size of force needed to defend them, as well as the size of the force required to take them out. The Marines apparently think that a 65-ton M1A1 Abrams battle tank won't be needed in amphibious assault launch to take them, especially since China is unlikely to base their own tanks on these islands. Okay, look, you never know. Look, we don't know what China's really planning here. They could easily just transport their tanks over there. You never know. Heavy cannon artillery is the 155mm range would also be unnecessary as the islands are too tiny to utilize their range. Well, you can still use them. Just okay. Basically everything after that is still something. Okay, we already know this. They're just planning to refurbish the entire Marine Corps. But this is a stupid idea. This is basically what was similar to the case in World War II. I know, yes, this was World War II. This was 80 years ago. But when it comes to actual ground warfare, you will still need to provide heavy armor support for your infantry units. It was like that in World War II. It also has to be done now. You never know what the enemy is going to throw at you. And not only this, even if you completely take off, China from the list, even if we weren't dealing with this whole thing with China, you can't just simply take out some key components of the Marines just for one adversary. What will happen once this whole hot conflict with China ends? Are you just going to leave the Marines to be what? A bunch of ground pounders? People, let me know your thoughts, and yeah, what can I say?